The biggest person missing here is Christina Caron.
He was making bizarre claims, like he was Diddy's sex slave, and that Diddy had forced him to have sex with his girlfriend, Cassie.
Diddy allegedly, and his son allegedly, shoot some guy in a bathroom. There are some major dogs that are not barking here.
What if the biggest names connected to Diddy's trial are the ones no one is talking about? Candace Owens says she's uncovered a shocking omission that changes everything. Stay tuned as we reveal who's mysteriously missing and why their absence could be the key to the entire case.
I was like a sex slave. I had sex with Cassie and Sean.
He was making bizarre claims, like he was Diddy's sex slave, and that Diddy had forced him to have sex with his girlfriend, Cassie, and that he had contracted an STD from them and then had sued. And then he also talks about like the black boule and the Illuminati playing cards, and he's like,
Relationship between Diddy and Cassie ended up being verified and true and sounded insane at that time. He also says that Diddy's a member of the Black Illuminati and that he would hear him on the phone discussing matters. And the biggest thing is saying that there's a hip-hop agenda, and essentially they create these guys and enrich them, because really what they're doing, and in further parts of this video on behalf of the feds, is that they're moving drugs throughout the United States.
Many people are asking pointed questions regarding Diddy's trial after Candace Owens recently delivered a bombshell on her podcast. She implied that there are some significant Diddy-related figures who appear to be disappearing from the story. These aren't people with accidental relationships or remote associations. These are people who, in Owens' opinion, have influenced aspects of his personal and professional life. The fact that their identities are not included in court documents and media stories has greatly alarmed her. She explained simply why. Diddy Owens pointed out the conspicuous lack of some executives and personalities who have been behind the scenes during some of the most crucial moments in his career. She called it a selective silence in the media and asserted that it wasn't an accident on her show. These individuals have the authority and influence to potentially change the industry not being scrutinized. When you start connecting the dots, it's as if an invisible hand is erasing key details and redirecting the conversation where it's safest, she claimed. Some of the connections she outlined go deep. Owen particularly highlighted people connected. To Big, she brought up Diddy's involvement with previous music endeavors where high-ranking executives made enormous profits from projects he led, asking why these collaborations that were prominent when it came to billion-dollar projects and cultural milestones are suddenly invisible now. Record labels and entertainment companies that have worked closely with Diddy over the years, Owens didn't stop there. She gave instances of when these people either openly backed Diddy or joined him at significant events in the industry. It's intriguing that she mentioned how these same people were asked to explain their role in what transpired behind those closed boardroom doors. Her tone was laser-focused as she added, "People should be asking why no one wants to follow up with them. Surely they weren't just spectators." The absence of these names, according to Owens, isn't just peculiar, it could indicate bigger forces at work. People used to be faces in the crowd at his parties or front row guests at his shows, but now they've completely slipped into the shadows. She questioned potential attempts to keep some people out of the spotlight, possibly to protect their personal reputations or larger business entities associated with them. This observation has sparked a lot of conjecture, particularly as more people start looking into previous partnerships and relationships. One name she didn't hesitate to mention was an executive. Owen stated resolutely, "This isn't a trial about one man. It's a layered story involving movers and shakers across industries. Whether this individual will face public or legal questions going forward remains uncertain, but Owens argued that she had been a long-standing force in Diddy's career and might hold crucial information. Raised questions about whether justice can be fully pursued without involving these individuals. But Owens acknowledged that this isn't the whole story in the same podcast, hinting that others might have more to say about these names that are missing. At this point, comedian Theo Von joins the discussion, sharing his own insights and insights. Interview 522-I-811. On a recent episode of his podcast, Theo joked about how big stories like this seem to shed a lot of light. The Von isn't exactly the first name you'd expect to come up in a conversation about Diddy's trial, but when he weighed in, his comments caused even more chaos around the missing names Candace Owens highlighted. Beyond the humor, though, Theo seemed to support Owens' assertions that some of Diddy's associates may be purposefully avoiding attention or, worse, being shielded. He mentioned a name that has been lurking in the background of the entertainment industry for years. Someone who has subtly influenced deals, campaigns, and industry trends, and whose connections to Diddy have remained surprisingly unexamined. It's not the loudest person in the room you got to watch for, Theo said. It's the guy who's too quiet to be noticed hiding in the corner like a shadow moving real slow.
All over the lawsuit, and you've had people since that have brought her up, and Skylar, I don't know, we actually wouldn't even be able to show that. And again, this is all allegedly, but this was the Ghislaine Maxwell that was always at his side. It has been alleged by people who say that they were abused by Diddy, that she was allegedly placing IUDs in women. People that have accused him of like a very aggressive form of rape have accused her of being the person that made all this happen. In Little Rod's lawsuit, he was explicit in saying that she was the supplier of all the drugs. She's just gone. Like, she's just, for some reason, they thought we have to take down Diddy, but it was very clear in Little Rod's lawsuit that Diddy was kept high intentionally because of her, because she was instructing people to keep him drugged, allegedly, on this pink cocaine, and she's gone. Like, I could not find a trace of this woman on the internet.
That if Diddy's throwing all these parties, Universal Music Group is in some way financially involved, but the lawsuit alleges that they're directly financially involved. And the lawsuit alleges that Lucien Grange frequently attended them and probably funded some of them, and certainly had secret meetings, or at least allegedly had secret meetings with Diddy frequently.
In his bedroom.
Yeah, in his bedroom for an hour or more.
Lucien Grange has been a very powerful figure for a very long time. Started with a totally different name, by the way.
You're the one that put me on that rabbit hole.
Don't trust men that change their names, least of all 3 times, okay? Yeah. A family that goes from Goldstein to G to Grange doesn't make sense to me. And you have him at the top of the food chain, heavily implied by Little Rod that they were allowing this to go on to get blackmail on certain people, and they just disappear him.
And I mean,
what's the logic here?
It's
no
understandable.
Evidence, there's tapes. Little Rod said there's nothing but tapes.
Tapes of everything.
And that Diddy was taping the people that were coming as well.
Yeah.
When he's mentioning a Little Rod lawsuit as the fixer, to show you how extreme what he's being accused of is essentially he's the guy you call if you shoot somebody.
Yeah.
He intimates this scene in the lawsuit, Little Rod, where Diddy allegedly and his son allegedly shoot some guy in a bathroom. Little Rod is as this guy is bleeding out, cleaning up, trying to help this guy. He's very close or just outside of the bathroom. Little Rod might have been in the bathroom. And he knows that after Diddy and his son come up and shoot this guy, he's trying to apply pressure to the wound. And they know that you have to call this guy, and he'll get the correct person over at LAPD to come over, and they'll tell a lie. And he says that the next day the press ran a story that there was a drive-by shooting, and he's like, that's not what happened at all. And it made me really think about the book Chaos that so many people on my podcast have listened to and watched. I have listened to, and it's describing a corrupt LAPD with feds that are involved and know how to disappear certain things. And we know that to be factually true based on the Charles Manson murders. So this makes me super uncomfortable.
Real slick. At first, he didn't specifically name anyone, but many assumed he was referring to longtime business executives who collaborated with Diddy on significant projects. These were people who, based on previous reports, helped propel Diddy's career to the pinnacles of celebrity and financial success. Theo vehemently questioned why these people haven't been held accountable or questioned for their actions. I don't think it's just one guy on trial, he said, lowering his voice for emphasis. You have a whole crew that helped build and protect a legacy. His tone changed from lighthearted to Theo leaned into anecdotal experiences as he continued to paint a picture of a complex network of influence and control that operates far outside of the public eye. Unlike Owens, whose presentation heavily relied on industry analysis and researched connections, Theo recalled hearing rumors in the entertainment circles he accesses as a comedian. He mentioned in passing that there were deals that should have been blown up years ago but weren't. Owens's words struck a chord because of his earnest approach. As someone who has been in close proximity to these worlds but is not embedded in them, he offers an outsider's raw perspective, which makes his questions resonate with everyday audiences who aren't familiar with the details. Therefore, I'm not saying I know specifics, but I do know there's something unsettling when certain names never seem to come up. Might already feel that the case is more complicated than it appears. He acknowledged that he had no intention of becoming the target of criticism here, but his willingness to raise these issues in public was enough to draw attention. Theo ended his tirade by mentioning an unnamed media mogul that he feels needs more investigation. According to Theo, this individual's career trajectory is similar to Diddy's in many ways. By connecting the two, he intended to pique interest in whether their paths crossed outside of the official record. He didn't go into further detail, but his implication left more questions than answers. Although Theo's tone remained composed, there's no denying that his comments added another level of pressure. If Owens' research ignited the fire, Theo's viewpoint is stoking it. Together, their comments are generating a degree of public conjecture that Diddy most likely didn't expect. But how Diddy has responded to this developing storm is where things get fierce. Interview 12/23, 14/003. Although Diddy has maintained a stoic front in public, insiders close to him describe a man struggling to manage the firestorm now surrounding his trial. When you combine that with the media buzz surrounding the so-called missing names, it's easy to understand why Diddy's response to the growing claims from Candace Owens and Theo Von has been anything but calm, according to behind-the-scenes reports. Diddy sees the claims from Owens in particular as a calculated attack on his credibility. She isn't just blaming him. She's implying that there's a whole network of powerful people who are behind these claims. Private insiders claim he's been visibly frustrated, frequently asking why these narratives are gaining traction and who's fueling them, could be complicit or at the very least avoidably silent. This type of story shatters the public persona Diddy has built over the years. He is not just a celebrity, but a businessman who takes pride in his control, which he is reportedly losing during this trial. Rumors have started to circulate about heated discussions within Diddy's legal team, allegedly stated that Diddy's attorneys are advising him to keep his attention on the case's facts and avoid outside speculation. However, that is easier said than done, as quotes from Owens' podcast are already being amplified by the media, and his team is reportedly rushing to make sure that these side conversations don't have an impact on the courtroom. This delicate, balancing act of defending Diddy in court while controlling the narrative outside of it has reportedly left Diddy agitated, and it is evident that Van's outsider perspective resonated with both fans and skeptics. Some people online have even started to piece together their own theories based on Van's ambiguous hints and Owens' more direct approach. This has reportedly exacerbated Diddy's frustration as he believes these narratives are snowballing into something.
You know Sean Combs?
Puff Daddy?
Yeah.
P. Diddy, whatever he calls himself. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he's part of what's called the Boule. The Boule is a branch of the Illuminati.
Okay.
It's the black people. I had settlement with Sean, okay? And he belongs to that agenda. That's why he's so famous. They land all the contracts. It's these attorneys. Basically, he would masturbate and tell me what to do with Cassie. I had like 15 encounters, and I heard a lot of business. Because what they would do is Sean talks a lot on the phone and on the TV with speakers and stuff, and I'll be in the...
I've never really quite understood why Diddy's fame has lasted this long, why he is so wealthy, how he's doing all of these extravagant things. Like, genuinely, I've never really quite understood it. And it's just interesting because when three things that seem so crazy end up fact-checking true, he also mentioned in this, we didn't show this clip, but he mentions pink cocaine.
Yeah.
At that time, no one knew what he was talking about. Suddenly, Lil Rod's lawsuit is speaking about that exact same drug that he's saying is a combination of all sorts of drugs like MDMA and cocaine. And again, all of this is allegedly, but he says that essentially that's what Diddy is giving out at these parties that has people that is so high, rather. And then another piece of this, which we didn't show, which he said at that time in terms of saving Trump, was he says that he saw in the Illuminati card deck that they were going to try to assassinate Trump. Again, what year was this that Jonathan Odie was arrested?
That was 2018.
And we can also now confirm that he was indeed a sex slave to Cassie and Diddy because he's testifying
into something far beyond reality, adding fuel to the fire. Theo Von's comments have only increased the scrutiny. The heightened speculation combined with his already difficult legal challenges seems to be taking their toll. Legal experts watching the case suggest that if the claims about missing names gain any more traction, it could complicate Diddy's legal strategy. Public perception frequently seeps into the courtroom, directly or indirectly influencing everything. One source allegedly quoted him as saying during a particularly heated conversation, "Analysts also note that those involved in the controversy may now have to deal with their own questions, which could prolong an already high-stakes trial." For Diddy, this uncertainty is an additional layer of pressure that he apparently didn't anticipate. Recent reports paint an even more dramatic picture of Diddy behind closed doors. He reportedly expressed his disbelief that political commentator Owens and comedian Vaughn are now influential figures influencing public opinion regarding his case, which he views as unfair and almost unbelievable. For someone used to managing his image and branding, this loss of narrative control may be one of the most difficult things to accept. It's evident that these claims regarding missing names are changing the course of the case, and as Diddy struggles to regain control, the increasing silence from some of these important players is casting further doubt on the trial's plot. However, why is the media skirting these relationships? That's where this gets 7 more intricate. Vaughn and Candace Owens indicate. Why isn't the question circling the trial's boundaries is the media's immersion in the tale, which has some wondering if there has been enough or not enough attention, is a component of a more comprehensively coordinated story. But while Owens and Vaughn are pointing out what they perceive to be obvious gaps, mainstream media are remaining remarkably silent on the subject, concentrating instead on Diddy and avoiding the larger network of relationships that fans are beginning to conjecture about. Some contend that it's common for the media to focus on the main character in a trial like this. Diddy is the star here. After all, but others think it odd that well-known people. Despite Owens' constant emphasis on their significance, those who had prominent roles during significant periods in his career have hardly been covered by the media. Take CEOs, for instance, intimately associated with Diddy's largest endeavors, like as record labels and historical cultural events. Those collaborations were formerly widely publicized in magazines, dot covers, and entertainment news segments, but they are now completely absent from conversations regarding his present situation. It seems as though they have been removed from the story completely. At least some of the media silence could. When it comes to public relations power, big businesses and powerful people frequently have teams working behind the scenes to influence public opinion and prevent unfavorable publicity. To safeguard their clients' reputations, media consultants can purposefully suppress stories, reroute narratives, or push the media towards safer views. In Diddy's, this may help to explain why some names, although being inextricably linked to significant moments in his career, are being casually ignored by one entertainment journalist. The phenomena was explained by these celebrities and executives, who have connections to the same media outlets that are reporting on this trial. The industry doesn't simply recount stories, it determines which are safe to share. There is also the legal consideration. Lawsuits, especially those of this magnitude, frequently have stringent gag orders, directives, or well-crafted public declarations. But in addition to that, there's the persistent dread of reprisals, which Owens herself alluded to in her podcast, when she said that some people may be trying to avoid spotlight due to their integration with the entertainment industry. She said that bringing these individuals to light might cause a domino effect that would upend established structures of power and control. Ultimately, whether through fear coalitions or direct meddling, the tension has been exacerbated by the media's selective coverage, leaving viewers to wonder what is being stated, and more significantly, why. But if these names are purposefully excluded from the headlines, which begs the even more important question, how might their absence influence Diddy's trial? The question that hangs over this case
Interview that Tupac is still alive
Yeah.
and he's in Cuba.
Drops it out of nowhere.
And that's been a major conspiracy that Tupac's still alive. I've never looked into that one. I just want to be very clear. But because I'm going back and I'm thinking it's just strange that everything this man said, or too much of what he said, has fact-checked true, which seems so bizarre. That another very bizarre claim he made, that Tupac's alive, he's in Cuba, and he's just like chilling and saying that. It just kind of gets you thinking about
All sorts of other things.
what is reality?
All sorts of other things.
What is reality?
I also, while we're on the Black Boule thing, that Jonathan
Could you
Audi
describe, by
brings
the
up
way,
the Black
because
Boule.
when you actually brought up the Black Boule, I had no idea what that was.
I don't know a lot about it, and I think that there's a lot of versions of it. It's like I think that it's like, you know, Vatican conspiracies go all sorts of different directions. The Jew conspiracies go all sorts of directions, and the Black Boule, I think the understanding is that it traces back to like the black nobility and one of the royal families. And LeBron James does have a gigantic back tattoo of the crest, like the symbol itself of the Black Boule. Very literally the exact image. Or it's his chest, I think. It's
I
like
think it's on his
huge.
chest. I think I saw that in your video. And
Kinda weird.
So that's interesting that he's saying he's a member of this, especially as we're now learning so much about what took place at these Diddy parties. And I want to be clear here, we can't really discuss Cassie's testimony because I try to keep this show family friendly, and I just
There's
can't.
not a single piece of that is.
That is right. I can't read anything about these transcripts. Suffice it to say, they were into just the most debased, disgusting sexual stuff that you could possibly imagine. She was very clear that she was high on drugs throughout a lot of it. I completely believe that, based on what we've learned from Little Rod and learned from other people, including this guy, Jonathan Odie, that was definitively one component of this. But it's interesting that we're talking about the idea of these people selling out the Black community on behalf of somebody else, because there are some dogs that are not barking, that have me very concerned in this case, because I read through Little Rod's lawsuit and I very much expected that the Universal execs would be brought into this into the hearing at the very least to testify. And also the biggest person missing here is Christina
Case as Candace Owens and Theo Vaughn's assertions reverberate through public opinion and media coverage is if these missing identities will change the entire path of Diddy's trial. Their comments aren't only conjecture, they're adding a layer of complexity, of ambiguity that might really affect how the trial proceeds, as Owens proposed that excluding some individuals from the discussion not only raises concerns about justice, but also invites further inquiry. Legal experts are already analyzing the implications of the evidence and possibly additional witnesses. Some contend that if any of the people Owens mentioned as important behind-the-scenes participants are thrust into the public front, then might draw attention away from Diddy as the only person being investigated trials, particularly high stakes. Ones like this one rely largely on stories, and adding more names could complicate matters. Additionally, if these ties indicate more serious accusations or greater power structures, the trial's scope may suddenly expand from what first appeared to be a single man's legal drama to a more extensive inquiry against the business as a whole. This is not without precedent, though. Provide instances of how missing connections can ultimately prove crucial in the entertainment industry. For example, early reports on Harvey Weinstein mostly focused on his personal behavior. But as investigations grew and more names surfaced, ranging from enablers to silent bystanders, the case was completely changed, resulting in the destruction of careers, the overhaul of institutions, and the start of new legal disputes. Although the details of Diddy's trial vary, the fundamental idea is still the same. Who's left out of the jury impression is another important consideration in this case. One legal analyst pointed out that adding new names, particularly prominent ones, could make the trial less clear-cut than prosecutors would like. Disclosures would allow the defense to contend that Diddy's acts were a part of larger teamwork rather than isolated wrongdoing. On the other hand, they might push the prosecution to look more closely into whether other people profited from or protected him. In any event, it complicates an already complicated case. Now, consider the judge and legal teams. Judges are supposed to keep processes on track, but high-profile cases are rarely immune to outside influence. Distractions, public rumors, or even media hype about new identities might enter the courtroom and change the way specific testimony or pieces of evidence are considered. Defense lawyers may also take advantage of the hubbub to guide blaming these anonymous people to lessen their customers' accountability. Every public statement about who might or should be implicated increases pressure on all parties to react. But public opinion may be the most potent factor at work. As Owens and his Vans claims gain traction, people begin to raise concerns that the judicial system hasn't yet addressed. Social media is rife with conjecture on these obscure names, with both supporters and detractors pointing to old images, interviews, and commercial endeavors that seem to support the notion of more extensive interwoven relationships. This surge of interest not only generates interest, but also demands accountability, which may hold the key to revealing the entire trial story. How far will this go? These missing names don't just make Diddy's trial more intense, they might also provide the background that connects everything. Will they?
In Lil Rod's lawsuit, he names the guy that was in charge of Diddy's computer system. He names the guy that was his tech guy that was in charge of all the cameras. And no one's ever spoken about him since. He's just gone.
There are some major dogs that are not barking here, and it's
and they're all the most important ones. Yeah, and we didn't mention Fahim Muhammad, who would be a pretty interesting dog to put on the stand. Because Fahim Muhammad was one of the first people that we connected over. One of us made a video about him, and then the other one.
I copied you.
Right, and then that was the first time that that we kind of started interacting on content, and that rabbit hole started to go pretty deep. Diddy's head of security is named in this lawsuit, and he's named in this lawsuit as kind of the fixer, the guy that makes things go away, which is already pretty suspicious. And then one of my followers commented in my comment section that, hey, that dude was Michael Jackson's head of security. So I started digging into that, and that's absolutely true. And when you do the math, Michael Jackson's head of security, Fahim Muhammad, also Diddy's head of security, he graduated college like 1 year before Michael Jackson died in his care as his head of security.
One
and
of
he
two
graduated,
people that was there. It was
exactly,
the doctor,
second on the scene,
and it was him.
And he graduated with a business and marketing degree with a specialty in real estate, which does not sound like head of security.
Will they be the threads that tear apart his defense? Or could they obscure everything so completely that the truth, whatever it is, stays hidden? The whole case may hinge on how much or how little is ultimately disclosed when the focus changes. Candace Owens thinks the names that were left out of Diddy's trial may have the answers that no one is seeking. The Van's remarks further increased the curiosity by implying that those in the shadows might know far more than they're revealing. However, why aren't these important facts completely changing the case? Relationships under investigation, if the legal and media teams keep avoiding them, are we losing sight of the greater picture? Tell us what you think we might be discovering. These names alter our perceptions of things, and the truth may be closer than we believe. Stay tuned for more.